Next up, we have the keynote address from Bharath Ram, the Chief Product Officer and AdTech Platform Lead of JioCinema. Bharath brings over 2 decades of experience in product leadership to JioCinema, having joined in June 2024. He's responsible for shaping the product strategy over a wide range of content, including BCCI cricket, IPL, sports, entertainment, youth and kids categories. Additionally, he leads the development and growth of JioCinema's AdTech platform. Bharath holds an MS in Electrical Engineering and Computer Science from the Ohio State University and an MBA from the Ross School of Business at the University of Michigan. Prior to JioCinema, he drove user growth, innovation at Flipkart, growth for Shopsy, and built Flipkart Plus. He has also leveraged his product management experience at industry giants like Instagram, Amazon Prime Video, and Microsoft. A passionate learner and enthusiast, Bharath is a history buff, an avid fan of Star Trek and Thaler books, and is actively involved in the Bay Area and Seattle cricket leagues. Thank you, Bharath, for being with us here today. We look forward to your talk.
Hey, hello. Hey, thanks for the kind intro. And thanks for the warm welcome. Welcome to all of you. This is kind of going to be a informal freewheeling chat on the impact of GenAI in the space of OTT. So usually when these sort of conversations come up and there are like real projects that are commissioned with real money involved in actually setting up LLM-based projects, I generally get into first a preamble conversation on what this means. So people who have not seen this movie called Babylon, you should definitely see it. It is a recently released movie. It stars Brad Pitt, and I'm saying this as context for a very specific reason. It actually takes movie makers through a journey of when there was an era when movies were silent. No one spoke dialogues. People acted out, and then there was a caption that came, a text caption that kind of mimicked what the actors were talking about. And the Babylon movie captures the journey of Hollywood stars when it transitioned from non-speaking movies, silent movies, to the talkie era. So what will happen is essentially there are like these major superstars in the non-speaking silent movie era. When they transition to the talkies era, people will hear their voices for the first time and they'll get laughed out of the theaters. It's like, it follows an interesting tragic arc of superstars who did not get to survive from the silent movie era into the talkies era. And then a bunch of new set of people who will come and exploit the talkies like anything. And then it takes you through the journey on how basically money triumphs all. So anytime there is a AI-based conversation, there is the ecstasy of opportunity. There are like a lot of new people who will exploit, this new technology and make a lot of economic use out of it. There is this agony of creative destruction where a bunch of established people will just get outdated, and you will kind of see them perish. And there is the third wheel that I often talk about and caution people. We don't know what we don't know here. And so I always feel very embarrassed saying, hey, this is what I'm going to do with LLM, because everything can get outdated in about 6 months or 1 year. And I don't know if you remember some old interviews in the early 90s where people used to come on talk shows and say, oh, internet is nothing. It'll like die away, it's just a phase. And then it's now on YouTube and people make fun of those people. So I'm very wary of like saying anything that can become a meme within a year. But the one thing that I'll caution on the third leg is of this agony, ecstasy, and the macabre part of the wheel is there are a lot of second order effects with LLMs that we don't know what we don't know that can cause a lot of harm. So I'm very, very passionate about responsible use of AI and making sure that it doesn't cause a lot of harm in the long run just for economic benefits. So with that as a preamble, and you could basically replace GenAI with like crypto or talkies movies or anything like that, the narrative is not going to be very, very different. But with that as a preamble, I'll basically take you through how we are thinking about it, what I think the industry trends might be, and I'll try and keep it as real as possible. So this is a little bit of a history lesson. You don't need to look at all those things. In fact, it's very hard to read here. But this essentially tracks all the scientific progress made in 4 broad categories. The first one is text, where there was a period where people were basically using AI to do spam detection and all those things. Slowly it progressed into a phase where it started writing a very rough first draft. Now it is getting into a professional writer category. The same thing happens with code, where when engineers actually write a lot of code to do spam detection and all those things, they figure out that they are writing a lot of code to do spam detection, and they were like, how can I make my job easier for myself? And so you saw an era where there was a change from generally autocomplete suggestions to fragments of code being auto-written. Now, you don't even need to be that technically savvy. You just need to, you can speak English, type English. You can prompt engineer your way into, writing very professional code. Same thing is happening with images. Now, images have moved from, low quality images to fairly professional images. The same evolution is happening with videos as well. Now, I have a set of friends and people who work with me who keep on sending me scientific papers on this is what is happening with text and LLM, and this is what is happening. Yesterday night, Meta released this thing, here is a paper, etc. I view it with a lot of suspicion. In general, when people show me papers and all those things, I see it as 99% of the things here will probably not happen. But when it happens, there are very clear markers. Is someone's job is getting affected, some economic situation is getting affected, and that is usually a sign that take this seriously. So if you've been noticing, there is a lot of strikes going on in Hollywood. There is a writer's strike and all those things. It's gotten to a point where it's poking at people's real lives, right? So it's very interesting that people are now scared of it. People from a certain vintage would remember that when cable TV came onto India in the mid-90s or so, there was this major strike by movie people saying, oh, this will destroy our business and all those things. And then it's the same agony ecstasy loop continues. So it seems like it's starting here. There is a there, but it's going to we don't know what it exactly is. Likely this is an overstated fear in the short term, but very likely it is a real fear in the long term. So that is how these things generally tend to evolve. But broadly, these are the use cases. If you ask me to be real, these are 4 use cases that are very real. And the use cases are text, which is around essentially content writing, analysis, synthesis, copywriting, long-form writing, short-form writing, all those things. There are images, and it could come from in an OTT world, it's cover art. It's essentially if you go into a detail page, what sort of art you find, what is your corpus of supply of images for personalized content serving. For example, the content that one of you may see in your OTT homepage, for the same movie, the image art will be very different from what another person sees, right? That is usually limited by supply. So can you kind of enhance that supply? Of course, video, short form, long form, automatic trailers, all those things is coming up in a very big way. Code is another category. And again, here, I look for economic markers, right? For example, there was a very subtle pricing that happened last year. If you see, there was this prediction in Silicon Valley and other Western places where they thought they could replace all the outsourcing company with GenAI. And then you will see how the pricing of the stocks in Indian companies kind of fluctuate based on that sentiment. And then okay, there's something real that is happening. Now the price has come back to more real terms. It's not as down as it was a year ago, right? So that means people are kind of comfortable in the short term. Maybe there is something that will happen in the long term. So just so that there are there are markers to understand what is a dream and how to keep it real. And usually economic markers are a very good indication of that. So why is this a thing and we are talking about this? It's just that the ease of access. You don't need to be a professional screenplay writer. You don't need to be a professional cameraman. You don't need to be a professional anything. You just need to know how to type into a box, right? That level of access, the access to essentially hyperscale systems, it allows like a single person to make a movie sitting in their, in the basement of their parents' house. That's the level to which this access has grown, right? So this is a key shift that is causing us to think, okay, maybe there is a revolution coming on here, and we should be a little bit alert to what's happening, right? And there are again real world markers that are hitting. So this is, most of you should be familiar with the Sora story, but yesterday midnight, Meta released another version of their LLM, which actually beats most of Sora's standards, and it was very interesting looking at, now there is a standards war. In the 90s there was this Unix, Linux, Sun Solaris, HP Unix war, which basically competed on standards, and now there is a standards war on a new front. It's interesting to see the philosophical concepts being the same, but the war being fought on different fronts. But it is causing people to think that a very, very professional movie or a short form video can be made almost making you feel it's $1 billion budget, but it is just being made with the help of LLMs, right? It's causing studio investors to think about, hey, should I pause my investments? What should I think about doing, etc. So it does have real world economic impact, and that's the barometer we are using to see if this is just a dream or if there is something real to it. Why is this actually happening, right? So again, product people like to get into what are the core loops here. Core loops from simple content production is that you create an IP, you market it, you distribute it. In general, it goes from movie theaters to OTT. Sometimes it's direct to OTTs, but in general, video is the core profit center. What potentially this can shift to, and I feel very wary of saying this, but this is a logical leap that I feel I can make, in the sense that now there could be just the way Web 1.0 shifted to Web 2.0 and 3.0. It could be the entire Black Mirror Bandersnatch kind of a concept where you can actually do a loop with the people who are watching it. And why is that fandom experience very, very important? It actually makes, there is a lot of economic basis for this. So there is the Parr law or the Pareto principle that generally dominates content production, right? And most of you who work in some sort of an OTT will know that the Parr law dominates all. 5 to 10% of people would be contributing to almost 90% of watch time or 80% of watch time, right? To make $1 billion movie, you only need 2-3% of the world's population to actually watch it. So, but what about the other 95%? What is the economic opportunity in the other 95%, right? That it makes sense to actually flatten the Pareto and look at the long tail economic opportunity and think about LLMs and generative AI to play a role there. So there is a strong basis to essentially get into the fandom mode, involve people just the way Web 1.0 was just web pages. Web 2.0 became blogs and all those things, and then there is the Web 3.0, which is the entire social media revolution, which involved a lot of user-based content coming into the picture. This can potentially follow a similar cycle. Now, this goes into in general supply-demand kind of thinking. What is abundant is essentially, you have quality images, quality videos, and all those things. What you essentially need is mass distribution. How do you get to that 95% of the people who are somewhat in the fringes, 50% of them will be somewhat in the fringes, they could barely be interested, but they could be more interested if your content length was shorter, if the content was this particular category, right? So there are so many multiple interpretations of that genre, of a single genre, that can be appealing to a small slice of a cohort. You can't make a $100 million movie out of it, or a 100 crore movie out of it, because it appeals to a small genre. But when your costs are considerably low, you can start appealing to very specific niche audiences, understand their mood and make content that is very specific to their mood, right? Having said all these things, right, the way in which at least I prioritize projects, and just to give you context, I've been involved in this AI space for close to like now 10, 11 years, right? I created the first personalized homepage in Prime Video. From there, Instagram ad relevance, and then Flipkart, like, homepage relevance, and now here. So, in general, I know when pipe dream is being sold to me versus what is real, and then how to like kind of face it out to make sure you show real economic value first, and then chase a few bets here and there. The most important thing to invest, if you gave me like 100 rupees and said, how do you invest in LLMs? I would make your fundamentals better. This is, in general, in my teams, we call this the line and length bowling. Right? This is going to give you a lot of wickets, make search better, make recommendations better, make ad relevance better. This will justify the investment that you make in LLMs initially, right? And then have a few bets, right? So I've indulged in bets, especially in Flipkart, where there is this end-to-end chatbot, where you can treat the chatbot as like your salesperson, and they have like you see many people doing this, and I also see in the OTT world you will have essentially some version of an assistant who will come and tell you something about the movie that you're watching, or give you recommendations about the movie you're watching. It's going to be a little bit more seamless, where it feels like you're talking to a friend, asking the friend, hey, what should I watch now? I'm in this mood, and what should I watch now? So you will have like other innovative bets that will slowly expand, but the core of it is most of your investors will be expecting like, show me some ROI from this investment, and that's the P0 that I'm listing there, is where a lot of initial ROI is going to come from. But from a bet perspective, just so that no one else overtakes you in the business that you are in, like creation of short form videos, cleaning up content metadata, making SEO a little bit better in terms of it being searchable, etc. Video processing, subtitle generation, all of these are going to be very natural. It's not too dreamy, it's not too out there, it's reasonably a bet. It's not as core as your search recommendations and ad relevance, but I feel it is the second, third concentric circle where you can potentially start justifying your investments as you go along. So I wanted to like frame this entire discussion in a way where it is real, there is actually a person who's putting money into this. How will they look at this investment, and how can you kind of get to your goal by keeping the investment afloat? So that's this is the last slide. See, what do we know for sure is essentially the total production costs can come down. So there is going to be a whole lot of supply in the market from a content perspective. The efficiencies are going to go up. So for example, if there is someone who is kind of in a particular horror, then there is sub-genre of horror, light humor horror with very few gory blood scenes. There is you can essentially reach them. You know who they are, you can reach them very fast. So there is a lot of efficiency in terms of getting to the audience that you want. There is a lower risk because you've not invested 60, 70 crores in a piece of content, and then you are kind of desperately trying to make sure that the content works. You can have many pieces of content fail, iterate into the right pieces of content for the right target audience. So these things I know will happen for real. How do we kind of take advantage of that, and how do we develop our content strategy based on that? How do we structure our LLM investments based on that? That is going to essentially be an iterative progress, but it is not high risk kind of a situation. More people can get into this party and be involved. So I'll conclude with this. There's going to be a lot of opportunities where people who are not traditionally in the business will say, hey, the barriers for entry have been lowered. Let me get in, let me disrupt this. And you could potentially have, just the way you have people with MA in philosophy writing hardcore C++ code. You will have people from the outside who have pretty good ideas, but they don't know how to work the mechanics of this. They will come in and start to disrupt. There will be the agony of a lot of entrenched players suddenly kind of, seeing the ground shift under them, and it is up to them to make sure that the ground does not shift, and then they are staying focused. And there is the collective responsibility that our future generations will actually experience this. People have children. You want to grow the next generation in a very safe space. So how do you create a very responsible environment where you don't go too far and keep things very safe for everyone? So if you remember one thing, these are the three axes in which the next 5 years will play out. So let's play this out in a very responsible fashion. Thanks for inviting me. It was a pleasure.